This call is being recorded.
All right, comrades. This is our PE session for February 24, 2021. Today's material that we're covering is one of the founding articles from the New African Black Panther Party that was authored by myself, titled The New African Black Panther Party Prison Chapter, Our Line. And this article, which adheres to some of the older lines of the original New African Black Panther Party prison chapter, lays out an important analysis that I want to have the comrades have a discussion around and to try to get a deeper understanding of. Some of the positions have since changed, specifically the line on revolutionary nationalism, which was one of the founding lines of the New African Black Panther Party that was changed when it was formally embraced revolutionary intercommunalism in 2015. Also the line that the New African Black Panther Party at that time was exclusively African or Black party. We since, during 2006, developed the arms of the party, which were the White Panther Organization and the Brown Panther Organizing Committee. So those were two major things that had changed since the writing of that article, which on reading the article you may see were addressed in the article itself as positions that were upheld at that time. And since we have reconstituted as the Revolutionary and Communal Black Panther Party, we do still uphold the basic ideological and political line that was developed for the New African Black Panther Party, being, in this particular case, the class analysis related to the proletariat is the leading the leading class of revolution, the distinction between the proletariat and the Lumpen proletariat, and the analysis put forward as to the role, the nature, and why the leading class must be the proletariat as contrasted to the Lumpen proletariat. And those are the issues that I wanted to deal with in this particular PE and to develop a conversation around to get some deeper understanding amongst the comrades on those issues. So with that said, I want to give just a general outline of the article on the relevant points, beginning with the article addressing the role of the party or revolutionary party as an organization to coordinate and unify the masses for revolutionary struggle, which requires planning, assigning roles and tasks, and holding people accountable to those tasks. And the need for the party in doing so to apply the mass line, which is a subject that we've developed in our PE or addressed in our PE previously, which is to assure that we apply what is of interest and concern to the people, organize, evaluate, analyze from doing social investigation those particular needs, the more advanced methods of bringing those concerns back to the people in a comprehensive form so as to provide solutions and programs that will help the people to solve those problems and to also understand how those problems relate to the overall oppressive system and how we can work alongside the masses to solve their problems and move them further and further in the direction of achieving fundamental change and overthrowing the system of oppression and exploitation. Okay, in that context, we analyze what is the proletariat and why must the proletariat be the class that leads this particular struggle, and why the line of the proletariat must be the line or the class analysis and class perspective that must guide such a political party and political movement. And I analyze or break down the proletariat in three stages: the basic proletariat, the proletariat as the militant worker, and the proletariat as the revolutionary worker. So the proletariat in general are the wage earners, the people who must sell their labor power within the capitalist marketplace in order to survive. They must sell their productive labor, which generates all the wealth that is produced in society, to bourgeois or the capitalist bosses, the owners of the factories, the land, the productive system overall, communication systems, etc. And through receiving, a small wage, they're compelled to return day after day to selling their labor power in order to survive as a whole, to generate, the basic needs of survival, food, clothing, shelter, that sort of thing, entertainment, etc. So by working day after day in the social environment of the workplace, the proletariat develops a sense of social cohesion, responsibility to a group, working in coordination and cooperation with other people toward the end of providing for basic survival needs. Also, that translates into productive work or reproductive work in the home, in the community, whereby they develop social values, family values, a sense of responsibility to the development of the family, child care, that sort of thing. So the proletariat essentially, as an organic matter, develops a sense of sacrifice, a sense of cooperation, a sense of working within a collective as opposed to being individualistic and self-serving. So these tendencies that develop by working day after day within the environment of the workplace conditions the proletariat to have a sense of, social responsibility and values that render the proletariat the most capable and the most developed as far as achieving or pursuing political objectives toward changing oppressive conditions. Okay, the militant worker, or the proletariat as the militant worker, is the active, the politically active worker in the workplace who stands up to the bosses, who engage in union work, strikes, struggling against, dangerous conditions, struggling to, achieve better pay, just in general, struggling alongside their fellow workers against some of the oppressive, the exploitative conditions that arise within the capitalist workplace. So this is what distinguishes the basic proletariat from the more militant worker, or the proletariat as a militant worker. Then you have the revolutionary worker, who has a much broader and deeper political understanding, where they develop a sense of accountability to the people as a whole, to the entire community, to the entire world, to engage in revolutionary struggle to overthrow the capitalist system. They understand the system of exploitation and oppression in a deep and very nuanced way, as stemming from the exploitation of the working class as a whole, the marginalization of masses of people, the division of people as overall political strategy of the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, in order to keep the people unable to organize and seize power and take control over the productive forces, the wealth that the proletariat produces through its labor. So the proletariat as the general proletariat, as I pointed out, is just the basic worker who becomes conscious on a very basic level of, social accountability, responsibility to the home, the community. The worker as a militant worker, or the proletariat as a militant worker, is the worker who is more conscious of the accountability to their peers in the workplace, their fellow proletarians, and struggle, against, low wages, dangerous work conditions. They in general, engage and struggle with their peers in order to change conditions in the workplace. And then the proletariat is the revolutionary worker, is the proletariat whose political consciousness has been deepened to the point that they recognize responsibility to the masses as a whole, to their whole class on a global level, and they see themselves as responsible to overthrowing the entire capitalist system. Now we contrast this with the lumpen proletariat. The lumpen proletariat is a subclass of the proletariat who generally do not seek to work, who do not want to work. They have become conditioned to predatory behavior, reflecting a lot of the values of the bourgeoisie, which is they seek immediate gratification, they seek wealth, power, control through domination, exploiting other people, including and especially fellow proletarians. They don't have a sense of consciousness on generally any political level. They are the people who become what are typically perceived as what Huey P. Newton called the illegitimate capitalist, or the criminal class. People who just are inclined to all sorts of unprincipled, predatory, exploitative behaviors to take advantage of any opportunity they can to acquire wealth, to acquire power, control, and exploit other people just for their own personal individual gratification and wealth. And basically, as I said, their values are reflection at a more basic level of the values of the bourgeoisie. So this class, obviously doesn't have any sense of political accountability, accountability to others as a class, accountability to people in the workplace, and, they generally are not inclined to be, politically willing to struggle on anyone's behalf except their own and, the small group of people who may be part of the same sort of lifestyle that they're a part of, to the extent that, they find them able to contribute to their own immediate gratification and personal gains. So to add to, or to give a deeper analysis, the role of the revolutionary intercommunalist Black Panther Party is to give or to raise this particular class's lack of political consciousness, lack of political commitment to the level of the proletariat, because we recognize, as has been, realized by, prior analysts.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Such as Frantz Fanon, the original Black Panther Party, and others, the Lumpen typically are exploited and used by the ruling class as a force of reaction to attack and undermine the struggles of the workers and the proletariat struggle in general, because of their lack of political consciousness and their tendency toward being reactionary. But as Karl Marx recognized, they are capable of, exalted sacrifice and commitment, as well as being capable of, the basest banditry and, the most unprincipled behaviors as well. So it's our responsibility, because of the conditions of reactionary intercommunalism that have created growing masses of lumpen and lumpenized unsecured workers, to raise the consciousness of this subclass so that it becomes an ally of the proletariat, as opposed to remaining in a state of mind where they're easily manipulated.
Thank you for using GTL.
Wow.
He'll be right back.
Every time at the most inopportune moment, she wants to chime in.
Exactly.
That's what you said.
Thank you for using GTL.
That's the only way she like to do it.
That's how Susan gets down, y'all.
For sure.
Hey, Comrade Sojourner, do you see
Yes.
Comrade in the chat? She can't get in because the room is full. I think we're gonna have to I'm definitely gonna have to upgrade the plan to accommodate everybody, because I think they don't let above 10 people in on the free option. So
okay, that's what it is.
We'll
All
upgrade
right.
it. I got
Okay.
Jada
How
on
much
my
is that
phone
plan?
now. I don't know, but hang on. This is Rashid.
Oh, this is a prepaid. This call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using GTL.
All power to the people.
All power to the people. Okay, so yeah, just generally our goal and our function is to develop the lumpen to the level of becoming proletariat workers and having the political and class consciousness of the revolutionary worker, and leading them with the class analysis and class perspective of the revolutionary worker. All power to the people. So with that said, I'd like to go into a discussion, with the comrades on these key questions and issues of this article, and allow the comrades, to raise any concerns, questions, ideas, or thoughts they have on the subject. So if the comrades would, I would like for you all to give me an idea. What is the role of a revolutionary party within the capitalist imperialist system?
Can you
You
repeat
want me
that,
to go?
please?
Okay, what is the role, what function does the Revolutionary Party perform within the capitalist imperialist system? What is its function? What is its purpose?
I would say this is Hansi. I would say to organize the masses. You know, like we've been reading. The masses have good and bad ideas, so like the party would consolidate those ideas and synthesize them in a way that where it could like push for radical change, not for only reform. Also to develop radicals, not just cancel them left and right, but also not baby them either. That's what I would say.
All right. Anybody else have any ideas?
Yeah, I agree with Comrade Hansi that the role of the Revolutionary Party is to lead the masses. And in our case, we do this by practicing the mass line, to take, like Hansi said, the disorganized ideas, thoughts, and needs of the people, make them cohesive and coherent, and then give them back to the people and lead them in realizing those demands and making all the way revolution.
All right. And I agree with you, comrade. So, what distinguishes the general proletarian from the militant worker or the militant proletarian? And what distinguishes the militant proletarian from the revolutionary proletarian or revolutionary worker?
Somebody else want to take a stab at it?
This is Shenbi. Maybe the revolutionary worker is armed with like a theory and knowledge of history and like the events around like the material conditions in which they're organizing, whereas the militant comes from more like they may be aware, but they're more they might have more like action-minded goals instead of like, not that the revolutionary worker doesn't, but I'd say maybe the revolutionary one has like a large theoretical understanding, while the militant one is more maybe emotional / like goal oriented. I don't know.
May I add on to that with my thought?
Yeah, go ahead, Congressman.
Sure. I wanted to say, for me, the word militant, you can be militantly anything. And so to me, my understanding of militant would mean that regardless of whatever your political ideology, you're dedicated to it. So even if it's neoliberalism, if you're militant about it, it means that you'll defend Kamala and Sleepy Joe till the end of time. That's my understanding, but I may be incorrect. I'm interested to hear more.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you, Congress.
My bad. I had to rejoin because I was trying to speak earlier and I couldn't. I don't think y'all could hear me. So I'm my bad if I'm repeating what anybody said. But are we still trying to answer that question?
Okay, go ahead, Congress.
All right. So I guess what I would say is that like using like doing investigation, like the party should try to find the most, I guess, revolutionary potential amongst a certain sector of the proletariat. Like that's just kind of also a question that I have too. But my understanding is that we want to find the proletariat that has the most potential to have a good amount of revolutionary proletarians within it, given the conditions. And I feel like I'm saying that because in my workforce in like the film industry, I feel like there's the least potential, although like, we work cooperatively to achieve some like product and like, and that's element is there, is that because of like the wage that we receive, I feel like there's less potential for there to be even militant proletarians within that certain like workforce?
Okay. I'd like to respond to each one of those points you raised. With respect to the idea that we should find the most advanced workers, actually the role of the Revolutionary Party is to develop the workers to become revolutionary, because in general the masses will never spontaneously become revolutionary. The revolutionary line has to actually be taught. We have to educate, organize, and agitate amongst the masses to raise their consciousness to the revolutionary level, which is kind of a question that has existed, for quite some time in the advanced capitalist countries like America. And a lot of people ask, why has there never been a revolution in America? Why has there never been a successful revolutionary movement? And the reason is not because, the workers receive a higher wage or because there are more advanced conditions or there is a better standard of living in America in advanced countries. The problem is there has never been a revolutionary party. There has never been all the way revolutionary political vanguard party that was committed to organizing and leading the workers and leading the oppressed masses to develop them into revolutionary consciousness and organize them to carry out a revolutionary struggle. And a large part of that has been because there are certain layers of the working class who are considered to be the most educated and the most capable of administrating and organizing, the workplace. And they have been used, they have been bought off and developed into what has been called a labor aristocracy. And they are usually the people who become the head of unions. They are the leaders in the different liberal organizations, etc., who may be inclined toward giving revolutionary leadership because they have certain administrative skills and certain educational levels where they would be the most readily capable of understanding, advanced political theories, etc. But by being bought off and used by the bourgeoisie, they are turned into a class that sells out their own class, or a layer of the proletariat that sells their own classes out, for a multitude of different privileges and different benefits that are granted to them by the power structure. And these are the layers that have sold out the union movements and have sold out the parties who aspire to be revolutionary parties. And this is why there has never been a revolutionary movement, a successful revolutionary movement and struggle within these developed countries. And it kind of answers the question of what the role of revolutionary and the revolutionary party is. Without a revolutionary leadership, the masses are never going to become spontaneously revolutionary. So by attacking the head, as Mao, was known to commonly point out, when revolution fails, it's the fault of the vanguard party, not the masses. So when the vanguard party is stripped of a revolutionary leadership and it develops a leadership whose interests are allied with the bourgeoisie, then that's the movement that you're going to have, a movement that serves the interests of the bourgeoisie, not the workers. So I just wanted to point that out as kind of an answer to what our role is as a revolutionary leadership. It's not to find revolutionary or find advanced elements of the working class, but it's actually to lead and organize them to become conscious at the level of a revolutionary and class consciousness. As far as the distinction between the general proletarian, the militant proletariat or the militant worker, and the revolutionary worker, this is actually a distinction that I kind of laid out and hadn't previously been made by others analyzing the proletariat. And it kind of gives within the dialectical or analysis based on dialectical materialism how the proletariat breaks down at three stages. One is the unconscious worker. That's the basic proletariat. They're a worker, they are a wage laborer, but they're not conscious. But they have a general level of social conditioning by working in a collective workplace where they work with other people to meet a common objective, they develop a certain level of social consciousness, a certain level of political consciousness at a very basic level of being aware of having to cooperate with other people to produce what needs to be produced, working with people that they may not necessarily like, they may not feel any sense of connection to, but they learn through working with others, cooperating with others. Only by doing that are they able to solve problems, to work out practical solutions to meet certain needs, that sort of thing. So through the practice of working with other people in a social environment, they learn just at a very basic level the need of cooperation with people who may not necessarily be part of their immediate family or circle of people they particularly like or are devoted to, that they need to rely and work with other people to solve problems. So at the next stage, you would have a militant worker. The militant worker is the worker who, through a certain stage of political development within the workplace, comes to recognize a sense of class unity with their fellow workers, where they're joining together in struggling to fight against the more exploitative conditions that are created by the boss or the bourgeoisie, such as poor working conditions, lack of certain benefits, low wages, etc. So these are the workers who will sacrifice their own self-interest in the cause of fighting with other workers in a common struggle to change certain conditions in the workplace. These are the people who join unions. These are the people who go engage in work strikes, work actions, etc., to struggle against conditions that are imposed on them by the boss. The revolutionary worker, or the revolutionary proletarian, is the worker whose consciousness is raised to the level of a revolutionary, who not only see a responsibility to their fellow workers, but to all oppressed people as a whole, to the class as a whole. So they are the people who come together and see a sense of responsibility to the whole structure of people who are oppressed by the capitalist system at large. And they are the ones who will engage in the revolutionary struggle to overthrow the entire capitalist system. So the distinction being just a basic worker who has no basic political or consciousness as a worker, except just, the general idea that they must work with other people and cooperate with other people in order to solve problems or work out certain solutions to producing certain things that people need to survive. The second, which is the militant worker, is the worker who will engage in strikes, etc., and recognize a sense of needing to commit and sacrifice themselves to their fellow workers to change conditions in the workplace. The revolutionary worker is the worker whose consciousness has been raised to the level of seeing a sense of unity with their entire class and the entire oppressed people as a whole, and are willing to sacrifice themselves and commit themselves to the broader struggle as a class against the overall system of capitalism as a whole. So do the comrades understand the distinction I'm making now?
Yeah, I think, so the difference between militant and revolutionary as far as the proletariat is militant is willing to attend and maybe even also encourage others or do the mind struggle with others who are not yet to the militant stage. And then revolutionary would refer to those who can lead actions, can organize actions, opposed to the vanguard. Is that correct?
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to head out.
Okay, go ahead, comrade.
Bye, all. This is Faith, by the way. Have a good meeting.
All right, all power to people.
Bye, Faith.
Okay, so right, but just in general, the distinction is between the worker who is just willing to engage in work strikes within the workplace setting. The revolutionary worker is the worker who is willing to engage in struggle to overthrow the entire capitalist system. So they are the class conscious workers.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Basically, they see the full picture.
Yeah. So
whereas
the basic proletariat is the unconscious worker. Say again, Howard.
Sorry, I was gonna say so a militant worker could be somewhat conscious, but not not actually believe like in revolution, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they recognize the need to change conditions within the workplace, maybe for better wages or to, develop certain safety protocols or improve safety conditions in the general industry that they work in or the workplace they work in, but they're not conscious of the entire class system, the oppression of capitalism, the capitalist class versus the proletariat. So it's just a different level of political consciousness and social consciousness.
It's interesting because you see sometimes like people that sorry, I was gonna say it's interesting because sometimes you see like people that they identify with radical politics, but they're just doing like promoting that like reformism and labor. I see that like with like Marxist-Leninists sometimes.
Okay, and those, by and large, those are workers who, if they are proletarians. Now, the distinction is you have a lot of petty bourgeois individuals who develop that line, but it's not often that you have people who are proletariat who actually develop that line. So mostly when you develop a conscious proletariat, they become conscious on the level of understanding the need to struggle as a class or alongside other workers to change their conditions. Whereas the petty bourgeoisie, because they are conditioned to individualism and primarily administrative tasks and working in an administrative setting or isolated setting, in an intellectual setting, they will resort to the ultra-leftist line or, the line of just doing things spontaneously on their own or with a small group of the people. You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what distinguishes the lumpen proletariat from the proletariat in general?
I guess their motivation, I would say.
Anybody else have any ideas?
The lumpen proletariat isn't like directly like connected to like means of production, like they don't go to work, and the regular proletariat does have access to that, like they have a job that they go to every, or that they have, and then that shows up in different ways.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Yes, that's the basic distinction, between the proletariat and the lumpen, but the lumpen also is a state of mind as well. It's a constant level of unconsciousness. They don't seek work, and they actually prefer to prey on other people. And this is the general criminal class, those who would resort to selling drugs, to pimping, to hustling, gangs, that sort of thing. These are in general the traditional layers of the lumpen proletariat. So they're the more unconscious, the least inclined to see a responsibility to their own class and to other people, and a willingness to, through seeking power and immediate self-gratification, to exploit and oppress and prey on other people. So hold on 1 second. Let me call right back in.
Thank you for using GTL.
Y'all, I think I am actually going to have to head out as well. Thank you so much. I really get a lot from our chat and these, even if I can't attend everything. I appreciate it.
Okay, Jade. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
See you
All
later.
power to the people.
Hello?
Yep.
Hello. Here. Waiting for Rashid to come back. I'm sorry? Waiting for Rashid to come back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, his call ended.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll pass to the people.
All right, I'm back, comrades. So let's look at, for example, the overall analysis or breakdown of class in the era of capitalism or capitalist imperialism. And I think this will help illustrate or illuminate how these structures work. And I want to be clear on one thing before, I move ahead. I think some comrades or some people may tend to misunderstand that the lumpen is someone who is not wealthy or someone who is poor. The lumpen are in general what, as I pointed out, he gave the term the illegitimate capitalist. The lumpen in general are people who don't want to work. They avoid involvement. They would prefer to prey on other people, to exploit other people for their own material gain, as opposed to, working, engaging in productive labor, that sort of thing. And these are the people who fall into gangs, as I pointed out, selling drugs, pimping, just in general through what are called, generally recognized socially as criminalistic behavior of trying to gain wealth, inordinate wealth, at the expense of other people. So the lumpen have a particular consciousness, a particular inclination to behave in a certain way socially. And this is what distinguishes them from the proletariat in general. So with that said, it needs to be understood how classes break down in society. In capitalist society, the principal contradiction in capitalist society is between the exploiter, the main exploiter, and the main exploited classes. The main exploiter in capitalist society is the bourgeoisie, or the capitalist class. They are the ones who own or claim the right to own factories, the land, the overall productive system. They own and control communication systems. They own and control telecommunications. They are the people who own the industries that control society and that determine the distribution and the production of wealth. The opposite class, who they exploit, the principal class they exploit, is the proletariat, or the working class, who are forced to sell their labor in the workplace to the bourgeoisie in order to survive. In general, the proletariat are just like an advanced slave class. Okay, if you look at slavery, slavery is a condition where people are forced to do work to produce wealth for the owning class, the class that owns the slaves. They work in fields, they cut down land, they build homes, they do all of the work that produces food, clothes, shelter, but they do not reap the benefits of the work. They don't own the land, they don't own the productive systems, the tools that they use, they don't own the seeds, they don't own anything related to what is used by their labor to produce the wealth. And they must give up all the wealth that they produce to the owner, who then can take what they produce and sell it on the market, or sell it however, or trade it, and hoard this surplus as a massive amount of wealth that they use to advance their own interests. The slaves are only given a very small portion of the work or the wealth that their labor produces, a small amount of food. They receive the most mediocre levels of shelter, etc., that their labor produces, in order to just keep them healthy and fit enough to survive, to keep going back to work every day to produce the wealth for the owner. The capitalist system works much the same way. The only difference is, in the slave system, the owner provides the food, the clothing, and the shelter to the slave. In the capitalist system, the boss does not provide the worker with anything except a small wage, which does not come anywhere near the value of the products and the wealth that they produce, but only enough to keep them able to buy what they need to survive and continue to have to come back to the workplace to work every day in order to keep being able to buy what they need to survive. So if they refuse to work, then they will starve, they will freeze, and they will die. So it's a system that's set up to exploit the labor of the people, who are prevented from owning either the tools, the land that they work on to produce social wealth, or from owning the wealth that they produce through their labor. The wealth is appropriated by the capitalist boss who claims the right of ownership. He does no work. He simply administrates the system. He claims the right to own everything that the slave produces, which he sells on the market at its actual value and gets super rich from selling it at its actual value. But he doesn't pay the worker anything but a small wage, which is only a tiny fraction of the actual value of the materials and the products that their labor produces. So that the worker is enslaved to the system. They could not survive without the job. Now, those workers who do struggle to survive without the job are typically the lumpen proletariat. They're the ones who refuse to work, who say, you know what, I'm not going to work, but the only way for them to survive is to prey on other people. So the system is set up, either you become a slave or you prey on other members of your own class. So this is the basic breakdown of how the capitalist ruling class versus the proletariat working class is set up between exploiter and exploited. Now you have subclasses, which the lumpen proletariat is one of. They are a subclass of the proletariat. You have another subclass that exists between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, which is the petty bourgeoisie or the middle class. They typically work as administrators. They are typically individual workers who perform mental labor. They work in isolated settings. They work pretty much by themselves, and what in their labor function is similar to the proletariat is that they have to sell their labor for a wage. They can only survive by selling themselves or their labor power for a wage. What makes them similar to the bourgeoisie is they only perform intellectual work. They don't engage in actual productive work or productive services where they work in a social environment, a collective environment, where they must cooperate with other workers to produce the wealth. So they are more conditioned to being individualistic, toward working in an isolated setting, feeling that their accomplishments are accomplishments that are intellectual and isolated. So they develop a certain mentality and a certain orientation toward interacting with other people that differs from the way the proletariat is conditioned. And they receive a higher wage because of having a high intellectual or a higher function as an intellectual administrator than the typical proletariat receives. So they have a sense of identifying with the bourgeoisie and wanting to aspire toward achieving the full role of the bourgeoisie, which is as a boss, as a high-level administrator, that sort of thing. So does this kind of explain to the comrades how the class relations in capitalist society breaks down so that we understand how the bourgeoisie, the proletariat fit into the system of exploiter and exploited?
I guess I got a question in terms of like the lumpen proletariat's like desire to be in that position, because I feel like from what I've read, like the when black people were fighting for higher wages and fair conditions in the factories, like in Detroit, then there was like a period where like jobs were brought overseas, so that there wasn't enough like proletarian power, black power in the imperialist center. So then that created like a reserve army of labor. And like I feel like that reserve army of labor is getting larger and larger with like automation or just like or jobs being taken somewhere else. So it doesn't really seem like a choice to not work. I guess I want clarification on how it's a choice under the context of the reserve army of labor.
Okay. Actually, in an article that I wrote, In Search of the Right Theory for Today's Struggle, I make the distinction between the insecure or the permanently unemployed proletariat and the lumpen proletariat. Just because a person is forced out of labor and can't find a job does not make them a lumpen. That's why earlier on I emphasized that the real distinction between the lumpen and unemployed workers is a state of mind. The lumpen do not want to work. The lumpen would prefer to prey on other people, and they have the same aspirations of individual gratification, power, etc., that reflects the class values of the bourgeoisie. So they're the ones who are more consciously inclined toward predatory behavior, selling drugs as a conscious choice and aspiring to get rich quick and not caring who they destroy, what they destroy to achieve that. They're the ones who would prey on, sex workers, that sort of thing, as pimps. They're the ones who will get involved in gangs and use, the predative environment of the gang culture to violently suppress other people, exploit other people, etc. So the reserve army of labor, as you speak, but which is really much larger now and could be considered just a permanently unemployed class. The reserve army of labor that Marx and Lenin spoke of were just they were the natural product of capitalist exploitation of labor, trying to, create an environment where labor could be exploited cheaply and where the masses could not all be employed. So you would always have a changing condition of certain sectors of the masses being able to find jobs while a whole other sector couldn't. But in order to drive down wages or to keep the working environment competitive, they would hire another sector of the reserve army and put another large sector of them in unemployment. So it was a changing condition. But in the existing conditions now, you have just a permanently unemployed sector of the proletariat, people who can't find jobs at all because of automation and technology, as you pointed out, has completely pushed huge sectors of the workers out of being able to be exploited by the capitalist class, for their labor. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, it
Can
does. I appreciate that comment.
I'd like to ask is like so like with that being said, do I misunderstand when I understand it this way, like that that let's say if even if you don't fit, like let's say the Lumpen type of like that material, whatever, that class, you don't fit into it, you can still be really, I feel like, influenced by that culture, because like I feel like when you come from like the marginalized, yeah, like in the outer boroughs, like I wouldn't say I'm Lumpen per se, but I'm dispossessed. I've been perpetually unemployed my whole life, but also like I have to be in the street sometimes. I don't do stuff, but I hang out with people and a certain culture that does like it's like residue is on you, so.
And that's an important point. And I actually point that out in the article I just mentioned as well. How, lumpen culture, a lot of people who have been permanently unemployed or who are marginally employed have been strongly influenced by lumpen culture. And the bourgeoisie, the ruling class, through the entertainment industry, etc., they push this culture onto the masses. They use lumpen culture to infuse the masses with those same bourgeois values that the lumpen has, which reflects, like I said, the values of the bourgeoisie.
I'll link that article, comrade. It's in the chat for any who's interested.
Okay, so
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, comrade.
The lumpen is only folks who have like the predatory mindset, but like what about and that's it? Like what about folks who have like felonies or whatever, and they end up like selling drugs or doing whatever to make money? Like they don't necessarily, like a lot of people don't necessarily want to prey on people. They just are doing those things because it's the only kind of work that they can find or can do. So is it like just the mentality?
It's a combination of both. You have lumpenized workers. You have lumpenized. You actually have lumpenized petty bourgeois people who have the values of the lumpen because they've been culturally influenced to engage in lumpen behavior. The lumpen, as the distinction would be, the pure lumpen are those who prey on people and do this consciously so. There are those people who are forced to engage in lumpen practice to survive, but they have not been thoroughly lumpenized. They may, in some instances, the pure lumpen may flow in and out of labor. Then in some cases, the proletariat may flow in and out of lumpen behavior. You follow me? But the pure lumpen, yes, is the people who, in general, do not aspire toward proletarian accomplishments. They don't want to work. They prefer to exploit and prey on other people, and they choose this lifestyle as a choice, and consciously so. And if they did have an opportunity to work, by and large, they probably would not, accept, productive labor. They would rather try to get rich quick.
And I just say that leads me to this question that I had, that basically, like, cause there's a lot of people, I'm speaking from being somebody from uptown New York, like, that it's just like, they could get offered certain jobs and certain labor, but they don't take it because they don't see. Sometimes, many times they don't want to work because it's just like, it's just stressful, like working for them. And maybe they're immigrants, so they don't know the language too. But it's also, like the stresses of like the superstructures, or maybe like white supremacy and stuff like that. But so like, let's say if you're so the main thing is that you're capitalizing on infringing on somebody else's like labor, right? Or somebody else's, like, say the people who's working, like but what about people like how like the right wing people say they're mooching off the government, right? They just take services, like, let's just take like funds off the government, and then is that lumpen per se, or? Because I don't think that's problematic, I feel like I'm just saying it could be, but I'm saying like it's also like these people don't find good jobs, so it's just poverty, and it's just like a cycle,
Yeah, those would be just permanently unemployed workers, etc. If their agenda is not by and large to just get rich or try to accomplish power, control, wealth through preying on other people, then in general you won't say that the social relations of the lumpen practice have fully internalize the values of the lumpen condition. So you could say that they're lumpen, but not fully lumpenized, where they have fully internalized the predatory mindset of the lumpen, like the capitalist class per se has fully internalized its values to get rich at everyone else's expense and not give a shit about who they destroy, or they're only selective in their concerns given, political agendas or what would be the most profitable approach to seeking to carry out certain industrial goals depending on what industry they're trying to seek wealth from or produce, generate their wealth through. So it's a class conscious, a class tendency that is consciousness as well as social practice.
I get it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So go ahead, Comrade.
So, dialectically address situations where I guess you see like the growing legalization of weed in this country, and it now gaining almost a stance in the production of labor and or the means of production, I should say, where you have states like Colorado where the business is fully flourishing, and it's creating actual jobs where you have almost a lumpen element being turned into a proletarian element. Like, how do we address stuff like that? And then also where we have
You have 1 minute remaining.
But there's also an opportunity to take the relationship of capitalism out of that and have people understand this is a way to survive and less a way to prey on people, less a way to get rich quick and and more so it's just another industry. It's just another job, another workforce.
Okay, hold on. Let me call back in. Phone's going to hang up and I'll answer your question. Hold on.
Okay.
Thank you for using GTL.
I think this could honestly be a whole class in and of itself, just understanding the class analysis.
Yeah, you can see how intricate it is by all the questions we got.
It is.
It's
it's very intricate.
Now it's developed. It's not only that cute, you know what I'm saying? Let's say not say because I haven't read Marx, but it's not only like an urban proletariat. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of overlap.
Right. Yeah, I got mad questions. I don't want to.
Yeah, me too. That's why
I'm going to be here for 2 hours.
Gave me a good idea.
This is a prepaid debit call from. This call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using GTL.
Hello.
How fast to the people?
All right, I'll pass the people back. All right, in response to that question has a number of contradictions in it to kind of open the can of worms. Okay, just given the general context, where something that was previously criminalized has been legalized, and then it creates a structure where people can engage in it or participate in it as workers that operates within a given industry or a given sector of the market. It's indeed a proletarian condition. If there is ownership by a bourgeoisie, ownership of the productive process of the land, the factories, whatever is used to generate marijuana production, if it's owned by someone who monopolizes the trade or corporations or what have you, and then it employs people to do most of the manual labor, where they receive only a wage in return, and they generally have no control over the production process. They don't own or have any stake in the ownership of the factory, the tools, the fields, etc. That is a basic capitalist productive process. But the inherent contradiction is how drugs have been used to exploit and suppress various peoples, marginalized people, oppressed nationalities, etc., which inhere in that whole structure. So there's a contradiction in, I guess, how the process has been used. When marijuana was first outlawed, it was racism was used to do it. They characterized weed smokers as Mexicans who were criminals and rapists and this sort of thing. If you go back to Anslinger, who was the one who, yeah, blacks too. But I mean, it was primarily started, by saying that it was a drug being brought in by Mexicans, and it was focused on, the Mexican community. Then, it spread to being stigmatized as a black drug, etc. But there are the inherent contradictions in how drugs have been used to oppress marginalized communities, how they've been used to exploit marginalized communities, destabilize our communities, generate an environment of infighting, internal disruption and destruction, and division. So there's that internal contradiction, but within the general context of how you explained it, comrade, yes, that is a system that has been converted into, a capitalist work structure, where if you have a bourgeoisie, if you have a certain group of people who own the process, own the factories, own the land, own the tools, etc., employ other people to do the work that only receive a wage, and yes, you have a capitalist structure that's been set up, and a genuine proletariat who is doing all the work, and a bourgeoisie who owns the overall productive system.
So, the question: what happens if there's a revolutionary force behind that? Because at that point, it's the field.
I'm sorry, you started breaking up. I can't understand you breaking up.
I think we're on the same line, so I think it might be a little static.
Okay, go ahead. I hear you now.
Okay. Basically, what I was asking is, what happens when? Well, you say that if there's a petty bourgeois force behind it, then it becomes a capitalist enterprise. What happens if there's a revolutionary force behind it, and on top of it, we change? Well, we sort of rectify all of the damage that the laws against the industry have done to people, in the sense where comrades that are getting out of jail now have a place to get a job where they're not permanently unemployed, and it's in a field that they're already familiar with. You have a chance to also offer political education to your workers. You also have an opportunity to not only name the prices of your products and whatnot, blah blah blah, but you also have the opportunity to pay your workers fairly, because if you get the land, you can grow as much weed as you want, and you can charge whatever you want. You can charge as little as you want. you can pay your workers as much as you want because it's a brand new industry. So there's no rules set right now, you know.
The only way to revolutionize it is to collectivize it.
Okay.
Well, not where you would have a small group who own and control it that pay other people to do the work. Mm-hmm. To make it a revolutionary process, it would require, collective ownership and the owners sharing in the work.
So basically like a trapper's...
Say again? You were breaking up again.
Sorry. I said basically like a trapper's union. Just a joke. That was just a joke. I'm sorry about that.
Leave him alone, Jay.
I'm sorry.
I'm about to mute Jay.
All right, I'm done.
No, if it's legal. So if it's a legalized industry, then no, it wouldn't be like a trappers union.
He said a trappers union. I'm done.
Yeah. But does that answer your question, though, comrade?
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Okay. So with that said, and the distinction between the lumpen proletariat and the proletariat, do comrades understand why the lumpen could not be seen as the potential vanguard or leading class of a revolutionary struggle or movement?
Absolutely.
Yep, I got it. I had to ask a little bit of questions, but I got it.
Yeah, same.
And that they can't be counted on. They're a vacillating, predatory force.
Exactly. And they are very easily won over and manipulated by the pigs and the bourgeoisie to become their agents of reaction against revolutionary forces. And this is the danger inherent in leaving the lumpen to simply, or leaving nature to run its course with the lumpen. And it's how the lumpen were used in Germany. It's how they were used in the struggles throughout the Third World. And it's actually a case that Frantz Fanon was speaking to. Frantz Fanon was like one of the first Marxists who really analyzed the role of the lumpen and how the lumpen developed and have been manipulated against Third World revolutionary struggles, specifically national liberation struggles. And he was the first to realize and to point out specifically that revolutionaries have to, they are compelled to politically educate, organize, and agitate amongst the lumpen. Because if they don't, then the forces of reaction are going to use the lumpen as a violent force of reaction against the revolutionaries. That's actually how Hitler first came to power. Those were the first elements that the German Nazis used to fight their political opponents and to give them the first step up into power. They used the street gang, the unemployed, the veterans from the military who couldn't find jobs and who started preying on people. Those are the elements that they first used to give them their foothold to gain power. And in every social movement, every revolutionary movement, the lumpen have been a substantial component of the forces of reaction that were manipulated by the bourgeoisie to overthrow socialist revolutionary struggles and to overthrow their political opponents, to win them, political power, to at least advance them in the first stages of their struggle for political power. And this is why we exist as a political party, because with the developments of reactionary intercommunalism, where massive numbers of workers have been pushed out of employment, there is a rise, a massive growth of permanently unemployed people and specifically lumpen people. And if we don't politicize these people, if we don't teach these people, remold these people's political or apolitical mindsets to politicize them, to proletarianize them, then we're going to have to fight these people. And this is what has happened at many stages of the struggle historically. They used the lumpen against the Black Panther Party. I have been a target of the pigs manipulating lumpen gangs or what have you. This is the game that the pigs play. And this is why we exist as the party that we do, a revolutionary intercommunal party whose primary focus is not on the traditional proletariat, but on the permanently unemployed proletariat and the lumpen, to proletarianize them, to develop them into allies and comrades of the traditional revolutionary movement. So do the comrades understand how this process works?
I think I don't
I'm sorry,
understand how.
you're breaking up. You're breaking up, comrade.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Go ahead.
I guess I don't understand the distinction of like the classes, like why the lumpen is more likely to be swayed by like the capitalist regime, other than the proletariat. When, and like how I see it is like the proletariat have like something to lose and are less likely to join in the revolutionary movement than the lumpen would. I can see how like anyone can be swayed to like join the existing structure or like, you know, but I'm not sure I understand why lumpens are like less than the proletariat, or like more likely to be swayed.
Okay, that's a good question. The lumpen are more inclined to be swayed because the lumpen are conditioned to prey on other people. The lumpen, because of their social practice, do not have a conditioned sense of responsibility to anybody but themselves. They don't care about anybody but themselves. They have the same general selfishness, orientation towards self-gratification, accomplishments of personal power at the expense of other people that the bourgeoisie has. They have almost fully internalized the class values of the bourgeoisie, whereas the proletariat, who is conditioned to having a sense of social consciousness and responsibility to other people, they have a conditioned understanding of the need to work together, and especially if they are politically educated, they have a conditioned sense of responsibility to other people, the family, workers, their class, etc., where they are willing to sacrifice and struggle against a system that exploits them, exploits their labor. And when they really become conscious, just like with slaves, when slaves become conscious that you actually don't need the slave owner. The slave owner has indoctrinated you, brainwashed you into believing you depend on them to survive, that they are the source of the food that you eat, they are the source of the shelter you have, they are the source of the clothes on your back, when actually your labor is what produces all of that for them and your own, whereas they only hand you down crumbs of the wealth that your labor produces. If you were able to show this to slaves and consciously awaken them to this condition of exploitation that they are the victims of, and they realize the owner is dependent on you for their survival, and they are stealing everything that you are producing for their own personal gain to hoard so that they are inordinately wealthy and you are immensely impoverished. You can't meet the needs of your family. You live a suffered lifestyle. You are forced to labor, from sun up to sundown. You're beaten, you're brutalized. You are conditioned to being exploited. Once the workers become conscious of this social contradiction, this productive contradiction, then they have the greatest inclination to say, you know what, I produce all this wealth. You are living at my expense and don't do anything at all. I want what I produce. We are the ones who produce these cars that you are selling for $30,000, $40,000 and pocketing this profit, but you're only paying me like $100 a day or $50 a day.
Yeah.
And I'm producing with a few other workers. I'm producing 60 or 70 of these cars every day.
Yeah, I guess I hear that, but I also think that like the lumpen care about their family and stuff like that. That there's just like they're all victims of capitalism, and there's not like a big moral distinguish to me, like this difference to me. But I hear what you're saying.
Yes, they do.
You don't.
Yes, they do, and these are the basis on which we can also appeal to the lumpen to win them over to the struggle. But the proletariat are more conditioned by the work environment to recognize a sense of responsibility to people other than their family as a class, as opposed to just people they have an intimate relationship with. You follow me? This is why class consciousness is more easily attainable in workers than it is the lumpen.
I'd like to have a separate PE just around this, because I think it is an important question, and it's very nuanced. And I do agree with what she just said, in that all of us are victims of capitalism. I think that's true. but I think that I would love to have another study just where we really explore the class question in depth.
And yes, you're exactly right. Everybody beneath the bourgeoisie is a victim of capitalism, which is why we struggle to unite all who can be united in a united front. So the exploitation just comes down in different ways, and the proletariat don't exploit anybody. They're the only class who don't profit from exploiting anybody. So as a class, they have the most to gain and nothing to lose. Whereas the lumpen, they prey on somebody. They gain at someone else's expense. The petty bourgeoisie, they profit at someone else's expense. Or they're conditioned to an environment where they oppress another layer of the proletariat in order for them to gain the privileges that they have. So every class except the proletariat profits off of suppressing or exploiting some other class to some degree. And this again is why the proletariat is more inclined. Go ahead, Conrad.
Oh, can I ask that? So, you say the proletariat, the proletariat doesn't exploit any class, but within that class, you said there's a petty B, right? So that petty B sometimes does. Well, I don't know if it exploits it, but it has privileges, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Yeah, I was just saying that the petty bourgeoisie, they exploit another layer of people. The petty bourgeoisie are not the proletariat. They are a class between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
So they basically take on the intellectual administrative role of the bourgeoisie, but they also must sell their labor power for a wage like the proletariat. That's why they are a middling class between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. So they share the class values of both classes, or they vacillate between them. They are literally a middle class.
I see. No, because now with the left, there's like a religiousness. I feel like a dogmatism. Sometimes they feel like, oh, because you make a little better, that means you're an exploiter. But it's really just it's all working class, right? It's all working class. Sorry if I'm asking too many questions.
Yeah. No, you're not. These are issues that really need to be fleshed out, and comrades really need to have a clear understanding of. Because like Miles said, in order to understand who are your real enemies and who are your real friends, you have to have a clear understanding of the class relations that exist in a given society.
Okay. Because if there's one thing that I learned today, I learned a couple of things today, but that was really important. I thought the labor aristocracy was like anybody that had a union. That's how like the liberal dogmatism. I feel like here, it's like a Prussian Olympics. Like sometimes they just want to. It's just like if you have a little bit better, that means you're an exploiter. But it's more to that. You're saying that the labor aristocracy is like the supervisors, the people that the bosses and stuff like that.
No, actually, the labor aristocracy is a layer of the proletariat. They are a bought-off layer of the proletariat who are used to misdirect the workers' movement. They are a layer. They are sellouts. They are typically, when you look at the unions that exist today, they are the ones who are the head of the union, who interact with the bosses, who are given certain privileges to collaborate with the bosses at the expense of the workers. That's why they're called a labor aristocracy.
Would that not then make them
of the workers.
Petty bourgeois?
No, they are actually proletarian. They are like Lenin said, the labor aristocracy is bought off in 1,000 ways. They're given all sorts of benefits. It's not necessarily financial benefits. Some just by having the authority to tell others what to do will sell out to the capitalist bosses.
Right.
Yep. And sell out the interests of the workers in the union.
You have 1 minute remaining.
They are the sellouts within the workers' movement, the workers' parties, etc. They are how the bourgeoisie has prevented proletarian revolutionary parties from developing in the advanced capitalist country. They are the ones who are placed in positions of leadership in the unions and in the parties that are supposed to be workers' parties. That's the labor aristocracy. But you got these third worlders who fabricate the labor aristocracy and attribute it to all white people.
And black people too in the first world.
Yeah, all first world people. So hold on, let me call back in. The phone's getting ready to hang up. Sorry.
Thank you for using GTL.
I definitely want to go into that a little bit too, because I'm in a hella. I mean, I would have called them labor aristocracy before this call. I still feel like I want to call them that just because, like, you know, my union is part of like making the propaganda. Like, we make TV and commercials, like, and get paid pretty well for that. And I've been trying to organize in that union for a minute with my fellow like union members, and there are big real barriers in our material lives that like what like I don't. I mean, I'm not saying that if I can't do it, it can't be done, but like to get my union to strike with garbage workers, like that's an unimaginable thing for my union that has very good health care, even though they're wage laborers. So
Yeah, so that's how they win you over.
Yeah, it's just like.
Because I always say, like my mom, for example, I live with my mom, and I live off her, you know, because I'm professionally unemployed. But like, she works in the, you know, she has that union 1199, you know, because she works uptown in the hospital, and even the way, so if you look at what they do, that union, see, they send pamphlets. They were promoting Hillary Clinton and everything, you know, like when she was like in the election. So that's how you can see it's not really radical. You know?
Okay, I'm back. All right, so do the comrades, I guess, with the last question I asked as to why the lumpen could not be seen as a revolutionary class or lead a revolutionary movement. So do the comrades understand why it's imperative that there be almost a focused political organization that is oriented toward developing or proletarianizing the lumpen and the permanently unemployed who are lumpenized or influenced by lumpen subculture? Do the comrades understand why this is important in particularly the way societies have developed today?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
I
you.
can hear you, comrade.
Okay. This is the part of that we're focusing on, like the lumpen proletariat. I guess we've kind of dissected that term a lot, but why the lumpen proletariat is more likely to like snitch or collaborate with like cops or whatever, and the need for like a vanguard to prevent against this. And I feel like that kind of goes against a lot of my observations on the ground, where I have seen more often than not, like workers' parties or vanguard parties in on the street level have actually more often than not collaborated with the cops, snitched on people in the like for the purposes of a supposed like unity of action. Where I've seen most of the work, at least this summer, and like all the way back to like Ferguson for all the uprisings that were happening there, a lot of the organization, class consciousness, or social consciousness being raised was being done in decentralized, like decentralized affinity groups or through assemblies. So I'm still kind of confused, and maybe I just disagree that a vanguard is necessary to raise consciousness of people when I've seen it actually weaponized against people mobilizing in the streets, and actually quite the opposite of people who are workers who are identified as proletarians collaborate.
Who is this? Who is this on the call?
Lily.
Okay.
Okay, to respond to that, comrade, let's look at this. The spontaneous organizing that you are describing, none of it has been oriented toward revolutionary goals. And if you notice, it has all been co-opted by the power structure by and large, simply by putting forth community policing or electing democratic political leadership, or by co-opted organizations like Black Lives Matter, Central Leadership, etc. A vanguard party is necessary to give people revolutionary consciousness. Oh, go ahead, comrade.
But those
okay.
Yeah, I agree, have been co-opted. That's not like the spontaneous organizing. And I wouldn't even call it spontaneous organizing, because a lot of not spontaneous, it's organized. It's just organized in a decentralized way that then appears to be spontaneous. But I agree that a lot of the stuff that happened this summer was spontaneous. It was unorganized, just being done in a decentralized way. And then you have these grifters and clout chasers that have glommed on to the movement and in many ways betrayed those like principles of abolition.
Well, I would again point out that there are no revolutionary parties in America. So these organizations, again, as I mentioned earlier, that have operated under the banner of being workers' parties, etc., were either petty bourgeois or organizations controlled by a labor aristocracy. So they were controlled by elements who collaborated with the police anyway, or shared to a greater or lesser extent the class values of the bourgeoisie. So they weren't genuinely oriented toward the masses anyway. They didn't apply the mass line. They were not oriented toward carrying out the struggle to overthrow the oppressive system. So they didn't betray the aspirations that they stood on, because they never stood on the interests of the proletariat, the workers, or the community. They were opportunists, and by and large, class allies of the ruling class. So you still see a reinforcement of the points that I was making. This is why there's never been a revolution in America, because these organizations that call themselves revolutionary are either petty bourgeois, or they've been subverted by a labor aristocracy that is controlled by the bourgeoisie.
I mean, I see that, but I also see that there is a lot of organizing being done in different ways. So I just, there's a difference of
course.
I think everything has like some form of like organization. Maybe what we're talking about is organization, that is really it's really gonna do something. It's, has been proven to do. But I feel what you're saying though, because I struggle with that too. It's I see other tendencies, and I would call that organizing as well. But anybody could organize. Think about it. If you can argue what happened in Ferguson and how Black Lives Matter became an NGO thing. It's still good because it's still massive. But, it became even less radical than how it was organically. So it depends on what type of organization you get into.
And not just that, but a lot of local, isolated, what you call decentralized, but isolated local organizing is not going to, and has not ever overthrown an oppressive system, and has not gained any real leverage against the oppressive system. In fact, the pigs prefer localized, decentralized organizing because it's the easiest to suppress. It's the easiest to control. But when you have a movement that's coordinated, that is strategically organized to pursue common agendas in a step-by-step process moving toward overthrowing the system, then you have a totally different dynamic and you have a totally different balance of power. In the prison system, I see this all the time. Hold on, I can't hear you. Say again?
Well, I guess I agree with that if that was the case, but I feel like when I'm saying a decentralized organizing structure, I don't mean that it's not in any way connected with a broader movement. Quite the opposite. It's just decentralized in the the modes and organizations, but not necessarily that they're not linked up with broader groups. And I've seen mostly the decentralized organizing on the ground being not local, but being like localized, but connected to a broader movement. And that's just how I've seen a lot of stuff being organized in recent years. And I think that has revolutionary potential to build that power base that then, we can talk about whether there's a desirability to have a vanguard party, but really without any of those organizations that are decentralized, that are bottom up, I think that there is a need for that as well. So I guess that's where my confusion lies, because my understanding of a lot of history and abolition in particular has been very decentralized, and needing that power base to actually have any sort of force against the capitalist class. But I think that's been being done in organizing on the ground. So I think that there's kind of a false distinction between a centralized vanguard leadership and decentralized organization. I think you can see both as mutually reinforcing each other if you want to, or you can kind of see them as two parts of divergent paths. But I think in any case, those methods are still necessary.
And I agree with you 100%. I thought you were making the argument that there is no need for a vanguard, and the vanguard has proven to betray the masses. You are in fact correct that the movement, the struggles at go ahead. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So the struggles at the mass level is essential. This is why we have mass organizations. This is why Lenin said we want to create hundreds of mass organizations. We want organizations that organize the masses and allow the masses to engage in energetic, spontaneous work at the mass level, but we need a vanguard to give them guidance and also to coordinate it on a massive scale, to coordinate all of these different discrete forms of organization and resistance against the power structure, but to give it a strategic direction. So you were right. There's a dialectical relationship between the mass movement and the vanguard. You follow me, comrade? Okay, so does anybody else have any other questions or concerns?
Yeah, I had one more question, and maybe clarification. Like,
okay,
we're focusing on like the Reserve Army of Labor, like those kind of sectors, and like I guess I'm thinking about like, I remember, I forgot where I read it, but Mao was like talking about organizing the peasants that have like the least to lose, like the lower peasants, not like the landowning peasants, even though they were both peasants. But like, I guess, should it also be our task to identify which sector the proletariat cannot be co-opted into the system? Like I say that because I read this article that was talking about how like those who are dispossessed by capital and are currently being like moved around and circulated because of capital's flow are the ones that are most likely to like I know we're not like finding them, we're making like the revolutionary proletariat, but just like in terms of like first uniting with those sectors who cannot instantly be bought out just because a dollar wage or dollar increase would be just enough for them to back out, but like like undocumented people who cannot be integrated into the capitalist system with reform, are they who we should be focusing on like with more effort?
Well, they fall into the base that we are seeking to organize, which are the permanently unemployed, the unsecurely unemployed, and the lumpen. So they actually fall into the category of people that we are basing ourselves amongst, as opposed to the traditional Revolutionary Communist Party, whose focus would be workers at the point of production.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I just say that?
Have anything else?
Can I just say? I just wanted to say that I think some of us, like we struggle because it's like we mentioned, like there hasn't been really like a revolutionary party in this country. So when there's been a lot of like contradictions, of co-optation and stuff like that. But like so then some people like I struggle with that. It's not like I'm gonna give up on it, but sometimes you get thoughts like, damn, is that ever gonna work? But that's why we gotta keep at it. And I think that's why some people stay with the anarchist tendency because they're like it's never worked, So we just gotta make something new. But it's like we just gotta keep working to make it better. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely
some people
think
don't get it, and then some people just don't unite, and that's fine too. Everyone's not going to unite, but I would hope that we wouldn't seek to disrupt other people's organization and activities.
Yeah. I do think that's like a common about like anarchy. So there can't be a party or organization like in like Rojava. There's like the PKK that is like like was a party, and then they're like an anarchist state that exists currently, and like that there isn't like a separation. I think it just depends on people working together and like openly working together, not like.
Yeah, that's the objective of creating a united front. So if you go back and look at the Russian Revolution, if you look at the Chinese Revolution, there were always a struggle for, especially against imperialism. There was a struggle to ally or develop alliances, a united front with all those who were opposed to the imperialist system and the ruling class. Whether your orientation was liberal, whether you were anarchist, what have you, there was always a struggle by the communists to develop an alliance with and create a united front amongst all who had a contradiction with the oppressive system. So, do any other comrades have any other ideas or thoughts or questions?
I had a comment. I just wanted to make a comment about that I think some lumpen they get a piece of capitalism, and maybe that's why they turn to becoming lumpen, because they say, I'm not going to go and work a 9 to 5 job and make this little bit of money. And I know, like they might not get the whole picture, but they get the exploitation piece that, our labor is more than what we're getting paid for it. And they're like, I'd rather go out here and steal and rob or sling drugs than to work for somebody 9 to 5 and, just still be struggling and have to get maybe another job just to survive. So I'm going to do this. And if it hurts other people, oh, well, I have to get mine. So they kind of, are embodying pieces of both principles. So in saying that, what is
That's
the way
true.
that you think is like best to approach the lumpen and trying to give them PE and things like that to bring them around?
And create programs that will show them how to solve problems in the community collectively and meet the social needs collectively. So that's an important observation, and that's part of what our whole political strategy is about, is to take these comrades at various stages of consciousness or unconsciousness and win them over to the struggle. Those people already have a foot in the door of political consciousness, recognizing that the system is exploitative. Now they have to understand why they shouldn't adopt the same exploitative values as the bourgeoisie, and how working collectively with their own class, their own mother class, which is the proletariat, or using collective serve the people programs, how they can meet their own social needs and the needs of the community at large, so that they become servants of the community as opposed to predators.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So
Then
the
I
other
feel like
comrades
it's
have
kind of.
anything? Go ahead,
This has been super helpful.
Yeah, it has. I agree with
Okay.
what Comrade Shu said also, that this could be a whole another, separate PE just on exploring these issues and these these terms, because they seem very simple when you just look at it, but after this discussion today, it's really not. It's very multi-layered. It's very interesting.
It's very nuanced, yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
think people who genuinely want to understand, we should take the time to explore this in further detail.
All right. And I did mention to Comrade Shu that I was actually outlining the article.
You have 1 minute remaining.
The social classes in
Susan.
America.
I can't stand
that. Said, they're about to cut us off.
I wanted to talk to the PSO comrades and the RIB comrades who are still on the call really quick. Before we disconnect. Mm-hmm. Were you about to conclude the call?
Yeah, I was about to conclude the meeting. It's going to hang up on me. I don't think I got anything left on here but about probably $6 or $8.
Well, call back. We'll figure it out. Call back. Because I want to talk to the comrades real quick.
All right.
Thank you for using GTL.